I wanted this to be kind of more like a community gathering, if you wanted it to be. I'm going to do a little bit of a presentation first about my understandings about the Fae and those in particular that are relevant to this holiday. And then I also wanted to kind of have a Q&A time where it might be that someone has something else they want to share or add about something that I've presented. So it's going to be about them, how to communicate with them, where they're at, where we can think about where they're at, and then why certain ones of them might be more relevant to this particular holiday. And then we're going to do a little Q&A chat, and then we're going to do a ritual inviting certain members of what I call the Fae, what's called the Fae, to help us connect with someone who's beyond the veil. And so that's going to be our time together, and I'm excited about it. So let's go ahead. My experience, there's a lot of different types of Fae. Can be, for me, it's anything that's sort of in higher dimensions: elves, gnomes, fairies, dragons, all the magical creatures is what I think about that meaning to be. But there's a lot of different information out there, and most of what I know is Celtic. I'll just say that we're going to kind of be talking about the things that have the cultures in Ireland and Wales and Britain know about these beings. And so I wanted to start off talking about a couple different kinds of them, different names for different types of Fae. And one of the ones that I think is relevant to a lot of people maybe are the solitary fairies. They're the ones that live alone in the wilderness. They live in trees, they live in caves, they live in barrows. All those barrows that are in sacred sites in England are known to have solitary fairies that will care for the dead and care for the energy of the area. Those fairies are neutral. And there's interesting things about whether or not these creatures are harmful. And I'll get to my understanding of it. And then I'm really curious to see what you guys think too. They're neutral, they're not harmful. The only time in my experience that any of the Fae ever get upset is when humans are misbehaving. So if we approach with love and respect, my experience is that by the way, there might be barking dogs. If you know any of my work, I've rescued another dog. So we'll just see how this goes. So, if you see them in your mind's eye, and we'll talk about how to see them, but they're often in very simple rustic clothing. They're just nature spirits. There's also something, especially in the Celtic lore, that are called trooping fairies, and those are the processionary images that you see a lot in fairy tales, where there's hundreds of them, or 50 to 200 of them, that are more kind of social, fun-loving, having a party. They love to be invited to parties, they love to be invited to celebrations, and these are also of Irish descent. The Irish people think that they descended from deities that reigned thousands of years ago before man invaded their space, and that's when they went away. If we start to connect with them, they're often seen in more sparkling clothing or something that's a little bit more fanciful as compared to the solitary fairies, are more rustic. Tuatha De Danann, I hope I pronounced that right. This is an Irish race of divine people. They were considered to be the children of the goddess Denu. And they were known to be kind of like ascended masters, we might call them. They were highly intelligent, they were capable of magic, they were beautiful, they were immortal. And they were seen to be actually the original inhabitants of Ireland before man came, and especially the type of human that did not respect nature. There's also something in Scotland called the Seelie and the Unseelie, and these are interesting. I have some pictures of some of these. I wanted to start it. So some of the art that I'm going to pull from is from a couple different decks that I have, and some of the art I'll share with you is online. The Seelie are it's kind of almost like dark and light fairies. So the Seelie are traditionally seen as these very kind fairies. They're good to humans. They help humans. The Unseelie were kind of, I would like to say, the shadow side. In my experience, I don't think they torment humans unless they the being naughty is actually to try to get humans to fall into alignment. Let me see if I can find a couple pictures of these guys. I knew I was prepared. So the Seelie, and if I can't find it, I'm just going to trust that we don't need to look at it right now. Yep, I can't find it. Okay, so the Seelie and the Unseelie. There's also something called the Talwith Teg. That is the Welsh version of fairies, or one of the types of fairies that are Welsh. And this is interesting. So we're going to get to talk about where these beings exist, where they went off to, where they came from. These types of Welsh fairies live in what's called the other world. And the other worlds we'll talk about in a second. They're very good-natured fairies. They're adept at magic, and they're adept at potions. A couple more different kinds of fairies in Hawaii. So also I'm covering Celtic. There's fairies in Japan, there's fairies in China, there's fairies in Hawaii. I know of them because my family lived there. The Menehune are very sacred to Hawaii, but they're also tiny little creatures that are guardians of sacred places like waterfalls and crystal caves. There's also a general grouping of fairies that are called guardian fae. That might be the solitary fairies. They dwell in one spot as if they're caring for a tree, they're caring for a stone, they're caring for a particular place, and they protect and interact that particular thing. They can interact with humans. There's a type of fae called the Watchers. The Watchers are more like record keepers. They don't intervene. They can teach us as humans, but it's almost like the keepers of Akashic records in the terms of who the fae are. And now we're going to get to kind of who we're going to be dealing with today. So elemental fairies are another types of fairies. So the earth elemental fairies, those are all the different types of fae that care for Mother Nature, the creatures, the crystals, the plants. So those could be the pixies, sprites, gnomes, forest fairies, mountain fae, elves. Wood elves are among them. And we'll get to more about wood elves in a second. But there's the air fairies, which are the sylphs. Those guide the winds. Those guide all winged things, including dragons, including aircraft. There's the water fae, which are the undines, the nymphs, the sprites, some mermaids. They guide the ocean rivers, the tides, the rain. The fire fairies are the volcanoes, the fireplace. They govern fireplaces, candles, sunbeams. And interestingly enough, they're seen as salamanders. And salamander, that's very associated with the Wiccan culture too. So the elves, a little bit more about the elves. Elves are Celtic. There's also Welsh and Norse and Germanic elves. It's a type of fae. And the elves are interesting. They're known for their connection to nature. They're known for their skills in healing. They're known for helping people with their creative endeavors. So they're good to call upon if you're seeking to be creative. They're also very efficient. They're good. They're known about this. They're known for the season of autumn, and we are in autumn. They're known for the hard work time, putting up they would call upon them to help them put up the harvest so that the community could survive the winter. Interestingly, the most popular way that we know elves are Santa's elves, and Santa maybe was an elf himself. They kind of migrated culturally a little bit in the modern time over to Christmas, but they were traditionally more seen as autumnal fae that we would call upon. So that's why it's another reason why the wood elves are here with us now. And the wood elves are those that typically come out at night. They're often seen as slender beings. And if you think about the way they would be able to merge with a tree and look a little bit more like a tree, they might be a face of a tree. They might be a little bit more spindly looking. I wanted to share a couple different photos from a couple different artists about what these guys might look like. I like this one right here. So you can see it's kind of a little bit of a nature spirit, and looking a little, there's some dogs celebrating the presence of the wood elves. And let me put up one more photo just to show another way that the wood elf might look. And we all have our own, the thing here is, in my experience, this is very malleable space, and this is our own third eye. This is our experience of what you may or may not have seen with your human eyes, or you may have seen from some book, or you may have seen in your own intuition. This is very, it's important for us to lean into our creativity and our intuition and our childlike self. If you think about the fact that children know and believe in these creatures, and us adults are conditioned away from the fact that they even exist. So the dialogue in your head of whether or not you know what one looks like, this is why we're gathered together, to connect with them. So a couple more things about the wood elves. They are the guardians of the natural world. So to share a story up here at the retreat center, when I got up here, the whole place was super overgrown. You couldn't walk through the property. And I'm not a big fan of cutting down trees, but we had to clear the land. We had to really prune the trees up, get the weeds off. And I immediately sensed the presence of these sort of people who were watching us stack the wood, watching us give the forest a haircut, so to speak. And they kind of would make themselves known around twilight, or they were especially able to be seen. I'll talk about how you see them in glimmers, and I definitely saw them as in the middle of the night, there would be sparkles of light in the forest, which showed me that they were there. So we're going to be working with the wood elves in our meditation and gathering and ritual today. There's also a type of fae that's called the banshee. And this is great because the way that we know, this is my favorite thing, the crazy woman who's screaming like a banshee. She's associated, if you look up pictures of what a banshee is, she looks super scary and evil, and she has claws and all of that. I believe is she's the presence that will tell a family about a member's death. She foretells death within about a day or two, and then she helps that soul cross over. And the reason I understand why she's really feared is that humanity's projected all their fears about death onto this particular type of fae, which is nothing new. And we also know that whenever there's a crazy screaming woman, it might be actually somebody who's pretty relevant and powerful. So the banshee actually means spelled Beansidhe. It means fairy woman in Gaelic. So that also tells us that she's relevant now. And because she walks between life and death, and we're at the Day of the Dead, she's very relevant. And the wood elves were saying this, and all the fae are saying we go between your world and other worlds all the time. We are very comfortable in this space. So they're all sort of gathering around us. And we're going to call on the banshee to help us. She's very good at helping people communicate with those who have crossed over, because she crosses people over all the time. So that's a little bit about the types of the fae. I wanted to talk next about where we might find them, how to find them. It's obvious that you're probably not going to find one at a shopping mall. If you're alone, it's going to be a lot better. That's been my experience. I've led gatherings where people who are aware of the fae, we could all collectively see them, but it's good to be in nature, and it's good to be alone, and it's good to attune your senses to the natural world, and even the act of caring for plants. Fairies love plants. We're going to be discussing the types of offerings that you might bring to different types of fae. As we're cultivating, what we're doing right now is we're cultivating a friendship with them. So if we think about this is somebody that we really, really want to be friends with, we're not going to show up and say, give me something. We're going to say, hey, so nice to see you. Would you like a cup of tea? Something like that. They can be found, they're really popular in all the megalithic sites. So the stone circles, the labyrinths. I purposely put goddess circles wherever I live, and have had the experience that there's always a fae that comes and inhabits that particular space. So circles and labyrinths, also liminal zones. So liminal is just a transitioning time. If you think about the space between when the high tide and low tide is on the coast, that's a really nice space to find the water fairies. The space here between the mountains and the plains, that's really nice space to find the wood elves, because they're transitional spaces. And if we think about what liminal in energy healing, the best time to do a healing is between dawn and dusk, when the light, the male energy is exchanging with the female energy. They're passing the baton back and forth at dawn and dusk. And this is signaling for us, and I believe it actually does signal something to our subconscious, that the world isn't always what we think it is, that this 3D world that we're so attached to, that we are leaning on everything we see as being real, is so just the afterthought. And the liminal spaces are where the fae like to hang out. That's a space where you can kind of also, when you're looking for fae, it's good to kind of let your vision not be super direct, let your vision be broad, and let your vision blur a little bit. And we'll talk about things that might signal their presence. Interestingly enough, I did not know this, but I was looking at a couple different books that I had as I was preparing for our gathering today, and kind of what I knew, what one of my teachers who taught me about them knew. But apparently they're also associated with crop circles. I consider crop circles to be created possibly by higher dimensional beings, because whatever the sacred geometric form they're communicating with us is a communication of sorts. But there's, I guess, really old lore where during this time of autumn, of harvest, they would be threshing the grain, but during that harvest time, it was very common to find sacred geometric forms, and it was understood that the fae were the ones that had created those by their dancing in the fields. The other time they liked to do this was in midsummer, because they like parties. So the other place where we can find them, I mentioned that the other world. There's 3 worlds in the Celtic understanding. There's this earth plane that's right in the middle. They call it the planes, but it's a 3D physical world. There's something called the other world, which might be a higher dimension, but it's more like the heavenly ascended world. There's something below the earth, which is called the underworld. The underworld isn't what we consider it as hell. The underworld is the primordial blueprint for the 3D world. So in that sense, that's also a higher space. That's where the Celts understand the Fae to go. So it's interesting that they go underground. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of us see, that they have gone underground, because this plains, earthen, human world has been really hard for them to live in and interact with us. Signs of their presence, and then we'll get to a little bit of a sharing. So, when I first started experiencing this, my teacher said, blur your vision back a little bit and start to look for twinkles, start to look for little flashes of light. You might also, the inexplicable things like a rustling in the grass when nothing's there. They also can come through, you might hear something, especially if you're clairaudient, faint music in the background, some kind of a tinkling bells. They love to come through with the smell of flowers or something sweet like honey. The leprechauns will use smoke because they like pipes, but so there's no reason for have the smell being there, but the smell is coming through when you're out in nature. And a couple more ideas of the inexplicableness. I experience with energy work, whenever a soul's coming through, you can feel the energy get a little bit higher. Sometimes there'll be more heat, or there'll be a cooling presence. So the Fae do the same thing. You can kind of feel that the temperature has shifted. And I mentioned with the wood elves, they can also kind of start to show themselves by faces in the trees or faces in the leaves. Butterflies are another way to consider that Fae are showing you their presence, especially if there's many of them, almost too many butterflies, or one of them that's really comfortable in your aura, that flies very close to you. That's likely one that's communicating with you energetically. Another way you can tell they're there is time will shift, because the Fae live in a world that is actual time. They're not, they never got involved in linear time. So time will almost seem to slow itself down when or speed itself up. 4 hours will pass and you'll think it's 20 minutes, or you'll be in meditation for 20 minutes and it feels like you've been there for a day. They're also associated, some of them, with rain. But interestingly, it's the pattern of the rain. So rain's falling here, but not there. There's a circle where it is falling. There's a circle where it's not falling. They'll kind of do something inexplicable with the weather. One other way that people used to, and I don't recommend this, but I've encountered this suggestion many places. One of the ways they used to start to be able to see fairies was to rub pollen on their eyes, which sounds painful to me. So I'm not going to recommend that unless you know exactly what plant you're working with and you've got an herbalist to guide you. But one of the things that I have done that I think we might consider doing tonight or some other time is to take flower petals, 2 of them, and something, roses are great because I'm not allergic to roses, but put 1 petal over each eye, eyes closed, lay down and ask them to show themselves to you. And that's where you might not see them, but you might start to hear something, you might start to smell something, you might start to feel something. And then finally, I wanted to mention dragons. Dragons are also, they're highly connected to the Fae, and the presence of a dragon very likely indicates the presence of a fairy. Dragon Fae is a whole realm of Fae. They have like a very long kind of history and they cooperate. So that's our, before we get to the practice is what we're going to do. That was what I kind of wanted to get the ball rolling. And I'd really like to open it up for a little bit of time. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share in regards to what I've offered? Does anything resonate? Is there anything else you want to share? Oh, I'll share one more story up here about the banshee. I forgot to tell you this. So there's above the yurt, there was if you look at it, it was a huge old manzanita tree that'd been long dead. And I could tell something lived in there, and I could tell it was a hag of some sort. It just looked like it looked very hag energy. But when we were clearing as a fire hazard, I told the guys, I said, you should probably take that. So they did. That very night, they cleared that area. I'm laying in bed and I'm woken up by literally a screaming, howling wind, just screeching. And I run outside because I'm like, wow, there's a big storm going on. And there was nothing. That's the other way that you can, that was very much kind of the presence of a banshee or some kind of a fae, where something you think is happening, but also there's no real explanation for it. So anybody have anything they want to share about your own experiences or add to my brief presentation? This could be a year-long gathering to remember these guys, but I kind of wanted to start. So feel free to unmute yourself and start chatting.
Yeah, so hello, Gail and Dodie from upstate New York. We go camping in the Adirondacks, which is a very wild part, one of the last wild parts in New York State. But that's where I notice them. And again, it's when we're sleeping, when we're in the camper at night. And I have my glasses off, and it's funny because you said blur your vision. When I have my glasses off, I can't see anything, right? But that's when I notice like little sparkling lights. But the thing I hear, Lisa, is laughter. I hear laughter. So I hear laughter in the woods. So
that's perfect. That's that reminds me almost of like the trooping fairies, if they call them, you know, like they're having a little not a little party. The diminutive nature of them and the fact that they are the only way we really know them in our culture today is by childhood fairy tales. You know, it's got this kind of patriarchal smell about it a little bit, but I also believe that they're very powerful, even though they're joyful and small. So thank you, Gail. That's awesome.
Yeah. Love to hear absolutely. That. I agree. And that's usually in the middle of summer, right? So you think that they're having a celebration.
Yeah. Yay. Anybody else have anything they want to share?
This is Tracy, and I'm out in the Pacific Northwest now, but hail from like Connecticut, New York, Catskill Mountains. So very resonant with Gail. My wife sees the sparkly lights, and I'm very drawn to the water fairies, like, you know, the mystical, you know, that kind of a thing, and in the smoke. And so fairies, mermaids, you know, just like all those that like to live in mushrooms, I mean, all that and wonderfulness. And when the sea comes away, so the sway out here of the coast, when we have, you know, obviously high tide and low tide, you know, that time period, and coming down and seeing and hearing. And while you were doing this, I, you know, was thinking very much of the Scottish heritage and fairy, you know, and rocks. I love rocks and heart rocks, and I find them and I ask with intention. And then I'll look down at the beach and it's just, you know, nothing but rocks out here in the Pacific Northwest, and find heart rocks, and, you know, kind of bring those to people if I am thinking of somebody with intention. And I'm very grateful to the fairies for giving me those heart rocks.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. I want to share one other story. We can go as long as we need to here, but I mentioned the email that my linear rational mind is overbooked and I'm late. I'm writing the Lunar Herbal Alchemy calendar, and it was supposed to be done today. It's going to take me another 4 or 5 days. So these wood elves were like, hey, you, come on, do something for this event. And I was like, you guys, I'm too busy. And so I finally did it. I sent the email out. Do you know what happened within 20 minutes of my sending that email out? Well, we sold 8 calendars just because. And then I have been putting into the ether donations for, we're doing a conscious kids garden project up here. So I decided, instead of raising funds and buying something new, let me put an ad somewhere and see if anybody wants to upcycle anything. So a month ago, I called this local in my neighborhood. I saw it's an 11-acre property, the Bluebird Haven Iris Garden. And I called them. I'm like, hey guys, tell them what we're doing. Ask if they, we could give them a tax receipt for all this fencing. I didn't hear back for a month. And I'm just like, oh. Within 20 minutes of my sending that email out, they called. That fencing is on the property. It's worth $10,000 new. Like literally, it was the Fae. I was like they were just so, I get chills thinking about it, because it just is, to those who interact with them, they are that magical. And it kind of just makes me well a little bit, because there's so much love there. There's so much just easy. It's like good old friends. So anybody else have anything they want to
So
share?
I have a question for you. So this past summer, we were actually hiking again in an area in the Adirondacks, and it was very overcast, kind of rainy, but not rainy. And we kept we were gonna like only hike halfway and then come back, but I kept getting drawn to go a little further. We came around this bend, and Lisa, so you tell me if this is them or not, but there was a huge rock with a tree growing on it, and it was in bright light. It was gray and dark all around except for this rock and this tree.
That's the weather. Yeah, that's a perfect example of the weather,
Yeah.
that I was talking about, the rain and the not rain, but that's a wonderful example of just the not a rational reason for this to be happening
Right,
now.
exactly.
And
But it felt like really good when we were hanging out there.
yeah, and rocks can hold energy, and they do love old rocks, because that's actually, they're used to that, right? So of course, thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, well, so we're going to do a ritual to communicate with those across the veil. We're going to go into a little bit of a meditation space, but I want to start to get the ball rolling to see if there's anybody. Just kind of put it in the back of your mind, if there's who you might want to, somebody that you love, that you have a loving relationship with, connect with and communicate with. And we're going to be connecting with a banshee. So like I said, I experience these as crones. It's a aspect of they're crone energy, but specifically for crossing over. But like I said, especially with banshees, I love to bring them things. So for us, made a little offering for this particular banshee, because I'm the one that's guiding you through this. But I got a little witchy today to make these offerings for her, because this is one of my favorite new things. So this is a little crystal glass, and it's full of an herbal tea, and it's mugwort from the garden, red raspberry leaf, anise hyssop, and then the thing that turns it the witchy color green is a flower, a butterfly pea flower. So I thought she'd appreciate that as just like a herbal offering. And then in the spirit of the holiday, this is just a really nice red wine from right around the corner. So I thought in case she wanted that, she'd probably like it. And then, interestingly enough, for this gathering, I have 2 years ago, I planted a certain type of hollyhock. It's called the Night Watchman. It's a black hollyhock. You wouldn't guess who bloomed this week. The Night Watchman. So there's a hollyhock offering. There's also for her some fresh mugwort and a lovely purple iris. So you might think about doing this now collectively, but if you want to do this again for yourself, because there can be, we're talking about subtle energy often, right? So there's a certain type of thing that happens when we gather that will amp up the energy and cause it to be big. But also, because we humans are so new to this, atrophied muscle is the word I use a lot for this type of stuff. Doing it alone can be you might consider doing it alone and seeing if there's anything else that comes through, because you might be able to, I believe that we're safe in this circle together, but you might even, give her an offering that seems like something that you think that she might want. And it might be a different banshee, because in my understanding, there's not just one. So let's go ahead and we're going to just sit comfortably. So if you're not already comfortable, you can sit, you can lie. We're going to close our eyes, and we're just going to take a few deep breaths. And if your legs are crossed, you might consider uncrossing them just to let the energy flow through you. And let your exhale be just a little longer than your inhale. And connect to your aura. And I'm going to invite you to invoke or create a ball of either pure white or pure gold light around yourself. And then just say to yourself, I'm protected by divine light in all situations, now and always. And then just back to the breath. As you're focusing on your breath, maybe you're breathing a little bit more deeply. And as you can feel yourself relaxing and your mind's just sort of slowing. And at this point, I'm going to suggest invite the banshee that there might be, actually there might be several of them here for us because there's many of us. Invite your banshee or whatever banshee or any other, if you've established a relationship with another type of fairy guardian and that feels better, you can do that too. But we're going to either invite the banshee or another guide to serve as our guide in this process. And just see if you can, as you're inviting them to come to connect with you, notice if there's any shifts. See if you can feel their presence. And now bring to mind the loved one that you want to contact. Maybe you can just pull an image of them up in your mind, a memory of them embracing you. If you want to, you can speak the person's name aloud or to yourself. And it's worth noting here, we're just with your eyes closed. Sometimes during this particular time of year and in this type of work, there might be another spirit who loves you, who's feels like they've been in line first. Just so if something else comes through, just sort of go with the flow. Trust that you're safe and just remain open to hearing from this loved one or from if you sense it's somebody else. So when you're calling on this loved one, you might feel their energy come to you. You might feel an energy. This can feel like a tingling at the top of the head. It can feel like you can feel it in your heart. Sometimes, like I said, that just like the fae, maybe the energy will heat up or cool down. Maybe you can feel them putting their palm on your back. Something that they would have done. You might even smell something, a perfume they wore, or if they, oddly enough, smoke cigarettes, you might smell something that. And there's many ways that they can make themselves known. You might see them in the etheric. You might feel their energy. And this is the practice that we can, again, do. They're showing me this is the time to do this, but this is something that the more we do it, the more we'll know they've arrived. So we're just going to just invite them to come for a few more breaths. Come to be with us, whoever it is that you're wanting to connect with. And when you feel them, when you feel your loved one nearby, in the astral, ask for guidance, ask for insight, ask for reassurance that life doesn't end beyond this physical body. That this asks them to remind you that there's many forms that we take. And if you have a specific question, most likely you will intuit a response rather than actually hearing it spoken. And maybe even as you're getting the question, you'll get a flash of an image. Also, sometimes images aren't what we expect. That's okay too. That's part of the magic. So just accept what's coming through. The idea is, even if what's happening right now doesn't make sense right now, that's us in our physical world, that likely the magic will reveal itself at the proper time. And so feel your loved one and feel this fairy presence, this banshee or whatever other guide you have here with you to support you both. And feel the love that is present. Just spending any other time receiving any images, any other communications you want to say or ask. This is the space also where time falls away. One other thing you might ask them while you're communicating with them is if you don't already have a sign to know that they're around. Bluebirds for me are a sign of my maternal grandfather, for example. Maybe it's a color, maybe it's an animal, maybe it's a plant, maybe it's something totally different. Notice what they show you. So this is the place where this might be useful to do this again later on today, or this holiday continues for several days in many cultures, but you can continue for as long as you'd like. When you feel tired or you lose your focus or you sense that the loved one is ready to depart for now, you can start to come back to this gathering, or you can, when you do this later, just start to come back and thank the spirits that you've connected with. Thank the loved one or anyone else who came through. Even if you're not quite sure who it was, send a pulse of gratitude. And if you're open to it already, before you go, hey, let's get together again soon sometime. And as the loved one has departed, we have our banshee, your personal banshee, the collective group banshee. I feel there are several here. Say thank you from your heart for her presence, for her support. The other thing she's showing me is she likes food. I forgot I made fresh bread and I didn't cut it up and share it with you guys, but I made some for her, so I'll give it to her later. So that is the beginning of a ritual that I would invite you to consider to be open to continuing throughout this eve and the next eve as well, potentially the following one. There can be some dreams that come through. Oftentimes on this evening in particular, I will wake up and go outside just because. And there can be imagery that comes through, ideas. This is an ongoing, non-linear communication that we've opened. And I love the Banshees, and I believe there were several with us here because they're saying we each have our own in some sense, and then our loved ones have theirs, and there's a group of us gathered. So consider deepening that relationship if you feel called to this evening. We've already given our offerings. I don't know if anybody is ready to share anything that isn't necessary. The other thing that is useful to do this evening is to burn a candle. In the Lunar Herbal Alchemy book, I just finished this section on this holiday, and one of the rituals that's in there is to one is to use a crystal to activate a connection. So that's you're pulsing that with your banshee and your loved one, if you want to use that to continue the communication. You can also light a candle with the intention for this communication with either this particular fae, the banshee, or this particular loved one. Let the candle burn all the way down. There's some essential oils that I talk about. We're not doing that now, but I just kind of want to say those are other two things that you can do. But let the candle burn all the way down, and also don't walk away from it. So if you need to use a birthday candle, those little ritual candles are nice. They burn for like an hour, but just do what you need to do. But the idea is watching it go through its process. And the way the candle moves is another way you can tell somebody's present, because candle wicks are really great at doing something erratic when there's energy in the room. Thank you guys. Anybody else have anything they want to share? I'm really grateful for everybody for joining me. This is the first time I was getting ready for today, and I felt like I used to live in the Bay Area, and the street I lived on had tons of energy, but it was all the people flocked from around the Bay Area to the haunted houses on my street. And I was always like, I'm going to go to sleep, y'all. See you later. This time it was like I felt like it was Christmas. I haven't felt like this in a very long time. Like, you know how when you're a kid and you're like, it's a holiday today. I got up and I was like, it's a holiday today. And I really was like, woo, we're going to do. So thank you guys for making that real. I mean, really, I was going to do some of this stuff, but knowing that we were going to gather really helped me kind of level up my interaction with this holiday. And I think it's good for us to gather as well as to do our own solitary work. I'm typically pretty solitary on these times, but thank you guys. Anybody want to share?
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is Tracy. I'm just sharing gratitude. It was amazing.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for being here. Yes.
Oh, I was going to say that I was thinking of a family member, and then I realized, oh, my family members are not really the people I want to get in touch with. I thought of an old friend from long, long ago, and brought him to mind. And that was, just sort of more in alignment with who I am. That was great. I was glad that you said, if there's some interference or something, pay attention.
Yeah, it's the connecting with the love is the way to go. It's interesting because this holiday and the banshees and there's a lot of different forms of communication, but I believe that there's so much light work to be done and there's so much expansion. So connecting to those that we really do, like I said, like even connecting with the fae, there's just welling, so it sounds like you were able to kind of find that person where there was that heart, good. Thank you guys for joining.
Thanks, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome, Jen. Thank you for joining. Anybody? Yes. Thank you. So I made the banshee. I you guys know I live in a yurt. So I made Dutch oven bread on the barbecue, and I made my favorite, but I'm going to give her like some slices, but it's olive and jalapeno, and I diced the jalapenos myself. And of course, now I have it in my eye. Not too bad. Not too bad. I just think it's kind of funny that she's helping me cry a little. All right, guys. Well,
I'm
yes.
just quickly, thank you. My friend Heidi came over to my house and set this up so that I could be part of this, and it means a lot, very much. I have a lot of friends who are solitary practitioners, you know, and that's wonderful. I've been in circles before, and I was always the troubadour. So the opportunity just to sit with my own energy and receive and offer was really appreciated. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm honored to have you with us. It's so funny. I was thinking about this is an eternal healing journey for me. Am I qualified to do this? You know, even starting my podcast, am I qualified to podcast? And you know, Spirit's always like, hey, just do it. You know, just get in there. This isn't you know, it's the community that's carrying the energy, you know, and I think, and all of us, it's like the teacher needs the student, the presenter needs the people, the group needs the group. And so thank you. That's why I said from my heart, like, thank you guys for being here and for holding space for all of us, because I believe we all know we're going through such beautiful transformations. And so it's so nice to kind of embrace the technology, embrace each other, and know that we can gather in so many ways. So have a blessed evening, everyone.
You
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. And you already are here. I'm going to put this on the YouTube if anybody missed it, but y'all are here. So yes, happy Eve. Okay. You're
Yeah.
welcome, guys. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.